Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. Last week I was in a bit of a rush, so the stories were brief. This episode will be back to my normal format. We will be heading to the West Coast for some great encounter stories. Which reminds me, I'm always looking for great stories to be shared on this channel. So if you have a story you would like to share in a safe environment, then forward your encounter stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. Today, I'll be sharing 5 stories, all of which are from California. But before I get started, I feel the need to thank all of you for subscribing to my channel and liking my episodes. So thank you all again. Time for me to stop yapping. So now it's time for you to go grab yourself a beverage and get cozy on the couch or chair and sit back and relax. Okay, so this is going to be the first story of the day. This story takes place June 1988, and it takes place in Plumas County, California, near the city of Yuba and somewhere along Feather River. So why don't we get started? I had a very close-up encounter in June 1988 on the North Fork of California's Great Feather River between La Porte and Quincy in a very isolated area. It takes 3 days to hike in and 4 days to hike out, and there is next to no foot traffic in this area. On this occasion, it was me and my 2 dogs, and it was a very unnerving experience. I hiked into this spot in the North Fork of the Yuba and Feather River, a place called Middle Fork. I found a spot near a tree line so I could tie my food up in a tree to keep the wildlife out of it. I made camp, cooked a few trout I caught earlier. The campfire was still burning lightly, and I was getting a little tired, so I decided to turn in at about 9 p.m. The fire was now just about out, just smoldering a little, so I didn't put any water on it. I just climbed into my tent and lay down on top of my bedroll. I let my dogs run around because they always stay close to camp, if not in the tent with me. I started to doze off to the crickets chirping when I suddenly woke up. It was as if I had one of those dreams where you are falling, and I could tell there was something very wrong. It was dead quiet, no crickets, nothing, and my dogs came running inside the tent shaking. My dogs were very aggressive usually, not mean dogs, but they would bark at anything that came around. One of them was a 95-pound pit bull. I was scared shitless, so I grabbed my rifle and pistol along with a flashlight and I stepped outside the tent. I couldn't see anything, but I had that sensation of being watched. I grabbed some more firewood and threw it on the embers left from the dinner fire. Then I heard something very heavy, footsteps right behind me in the trees. There was also a very strange odor, almost like a cross between a skunk and something dead. This thing circled my campsite all night long, well into first light. I packed up and started out, and this thing followed me almost the entire day. I could hear it and smell it, even saw it through the woods about 75 yards away from me, taking an almost parallel trail to me as if to make sure I leave its territory. I never shot at it with my rifle, as I don't believe in killing things for sport. I have never gone back to this place, but I would love to go on an expedition back there with some other people. Okay, so this next encounter takes place on February in 1986 around 1:30 a.m. and it takes place in San Bernardino County, California, near Big Bear Lake. We were in Big Bear and we were up there for a skiing trip. We arrived late Friday night on the weekend of February 15th, 1986. It started to snow after we got there, and being from the city, we went outside to play in it. There were 5 of us, 2 friends of mine and my 2 brothers. We were throwing snowballs and having fun when somebody noticed that there was somebody watching us. On the road, there was a person or something standing there quietly. It looked like a tall man in thick winter-type clothes. It was dark, so it was all black against the snow on the road, but it was very heavy-looking. It was at least 6 foot tall, maybe taller. It was heavy-looking and all one color. At this point, none of us were playing anymore. We were starting to get scared. We were frozen looking at this thing, and I yelled, "Hey! Who's standing there?" Or something like that. I didn't get any response at all. Then I yelled, "If you're human, say something!" And still no response. So then we got really scared. We continued to stand there for a split second, and then we took off back to our cottage. All right, so this story takes place August of 1970, and it takes place in Mendocino County, California, and it takes place on Round Valley Indian Reservation. I have been interested in the existence of a large bipedal humanoid in other regions of the world since I saw one in 1970. At the time, my folks owned some property on the edge of the Round Valley Indian Reservation in Mendocino County, California. Their property overlooked a south fork of the Eel River, affording an unobstructed view of the northern bank. While watching through the binoculars, a herd of about 15 wild hogs of various sizes approximately half a mile away, I noticed movement higher up on the slope and focused in time to watch a man in what appeared to be a fur coat walking briskly across a meadow of about 40 yards in circumference. 2 odd things immediately struck me. First, this occurred in early August at around 4 p.m. The temperature was in the mid to high 90s, yet there was what appeared to be a large man, maybe 6 foot tall, moving rapidly in the full light of the sun in a long, closely fitted fur coat. Second, I was quite familiar with the area, and I knew that there was no roads of any kind within 2 miles of that section of the Eel River. In addition, the terrain was quite steep and rough. My conclusion at the time was of wonderment. I mentioned the man to friends and family, and over the next few years, I began to become acquainted with the Bigfoot Sasquatch ABSM phenomenon. Looking back, I am now convinced that what I saw was either a female Bigfoot or a young adult. I base this conclusion upon the fact that the size of the man I saw was not impressive. What was impressive was his ability to move over rough terrain with such ease and in the heat of an August afternoon. No one who is familiar with the trackless expanses of the American Northwest can have any doubt that unknown creatures could exist there. My opinion is that the more intelligent a creature, the more likely he is to remain less well known. But even with a high intelligence, this creature has allowed itself to be observed. It is only a quirk of history that no hard evidence has fallen into the right hands at the right time. I believe that many pieces of hard evidence have been found and through ignorance have been stored in museum collections, personal collections, lost or destroyed. I have included my own sighting here for the first time just because I have found this site so interesting and as a way of showing support for your continued efforts. as well as for the continuance of open-mindedness. Okay, this one takes place in the summer of June 2004, and it takes place in Tuolumne County, California, Yosemite. My son wrote me from Yosemite about a Bigfoot encounter. My son Rob was 19 years old at the time, working for the California Conservation Corp, cleaning and building trails that summer. He wrote me to tell me there is Bigfoot up there. Then he called a few hours ago to tell me his story. Seems a worker up there was camping in the Tuolumne Meadows somewhere near a lake. He mentioned McGill Meadows near Lake Vernon in Yosemite, which is approximately near Tiltil Mountains. Tiltil Mountains was a spot for weird and unusual happenings. He was in his tent, ready to go to sleep, and he heard something come running down a hill towards his tent. The feet were hitting the ground with a great thud, and it was bipedal. He told my son that he wasn't scared because he considered himself a dead man at that point. He just needed to decide whether to get out of the tent and run. He figured that that would trigger the animal's impulse, chase him, and kill him, or to get out of the tent and try to pretend he was bigger than whatever it was that was out there. He chose the latter. He got out of the tent and let out the loudest scream he could, which was returned just about in his face by a much louder scream. The scream was so loud it was deafening, and the guy described it as blood-curdling. It scared him very badly. After the creature screamed, it ran off. It was dark, and the guy described what he saw as something tall with black fur, and it looked to weigh about 600 pounds. It was standing up like a human. This left the guy kind of shocked, and so he went to the nearest camp and was telling some old-timer who had lived up there for a long time what had happened to him. They then told this kid that they had so many weird experiences up there that nothing surprises them, and they have far too many experiences to even talk about. My son said that they have met local Indians up there that say there is also a creature that they call the Nunu, that they swear live up there. They are short, ugly little troll-like creatures. The only experience my son has had up there so far is that they were too far from the base camp one day to hike back, so they were told to make camp in an old uninhabited Conservation Corp building. It is used from time to time, but nobody lives or stays there for most of the year. Anyway, he told me he was laying down, about ready to go to sleep, and he heard a strange noise. It sounded like something came running up to the outside of the building and made a noise that sounded like whop, and then ran off. He said it really scared the heck out of him, but he didn't try to go see what it was. Well, so there you have it. Just ask where the kids from the Conservation Corp hang out, and you will have lots of potential Bigfoot Nunu sightings. All right, so this is going to be the last story of the day, and this one takes place on May the 8th, 2005, and it takes place in Del Norte County, California, in a place or area called Little Jones Creek. Two young girls, names omitted, stopped their truck on a Little Jones Creek road at a fork. They reported that they got out of the truck to have a smoke so as to not smell up the truck, which belongs to their uncle. The older girl told a joke, and the girls were both laughing loudly and running around the truck, just goofing off, acting silly, they said, both making a lot of squealing noise in an otherwise very quiet area. Worn out from running around and generally having fun, They climbed up on the hood of their truck to rest and talk mostly about cute boys that interested them. After about 10 minutes of both girls chatting, they began to feel really weird. There was no traffic on the road, and they were wrapped up in their teen talk, not paying a great deal of attention to their surroundings, when a very large gray-black, hair-covered man-like thing got their attention when it walked out onto Little Jones Creek Road and stood there still at the side of the road. The girls said they froze, afraid to move because it might be a ghost. They just stared at the creature. They said it stared back and that its hands were together at mid-waist, twisting its fingers nervously. The session of glaring back and forth at one another went on until the girls decided they should get back in the truck. They said they moved very slowly off the hood and each going towards their own side of the truck and got in and locked the doors. When they looked to see if the creature was still there, it was gone. There was no odor, and the girls said there was no audible noise from the creature and that it did not approach them. It didn't move once it was in plain sight. It only stared at them and then went somewhere in a direction they didn't see. They started the truck up and left, went home to tell their grandmother and uncle. The grandmother told the girls that they had seen the creek devil, who is the boss of these mountains, and that those creek devils are curious about young girls, who probably attracted them by giggling and horsing around. The girls didn't know how tall it was, but yelling into the phone that it was huge, bigger than man, and had the shoulders of a giant. They described the hands and fingers like those of a man, only bigger, and that the skin on the hand and upper face was dark. The face was manlike with whiskers on the face and butt ugly. They also said it had visible male genitalia like a man has, only it is dark-skinned. Part of the chest was bare of hair, but most parts of the upper torso had hair tight against the body like a short-haired dog. Neither girl noticed the feet, and they didn't see the backside of the creature. They were excited and youthfully graphic in their description. The uncle also said they know the creatures live there and they want them left alone. They are the Ridge Walkers. I hope you guys enjoyed these 5 stories from California. I know I did. I don't cover California as much, and I think that is primarily because everyone would expect that we would find Sasquatches or Bigfoot in the state of California. And I think that is why I tend to cover more stories from, Ohio or Michigan or other places like that. But these were great stories, especially the last one. Well, I shouldn't say especially, but the Nunus. I think this is the first time I heard of the Nunus. At least the name the Nunus. I'm currently reading David Paulides' book, The Hoopa Project, which also takes place in California. And in one of the early chapters, it does mention these little hobbit-like creatures, much like the last story, but I don't remember if they called them the Nunu. I'll have to go back and take a look at that. In any case, all fantastic stories today. I hope you guys enjoy them. I did, which leads me right into my next segment, and that is, if these stories reminded you of an encounter you may have had and would like to share, then please forward your encounter stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your stories on this channel. Thank you all for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. Please hit that like button on your way out and subscribe to my channel if you're new. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you all next week.